Hey guys, GE here. I don't have a normal camera set up because I'm testing this new webcam that I got. Well, fairly new. You can thank Air Max for that. It's a little bit lighter in color, not as good as the other camera. The other camera is my main one, but I'm still dealing with some funky issues with that right now. I have a little adapter that's like an OBS uh, cam capture, and it goes through UBS or it goes through USB, and it's not working correctly. I think it might be a USB bandwidth issue because I have a lot of stuff hooked up over USB. So yeah, I'm still working on that. But the cool thing about this camera is that it's more aligned for streaming rather than like video content. Because my other camera is for high end video content. It has a lot better picture. It can focus perfect and all this stuff. But this one for streaming is really cool because it does the whole tracking thing, which is really neat. I thought that was really cool. Um, but anyway, the point of this video is I'm probably actually going to make a couple of short videos and make a series of these because I wanted to go through some of the things in Nobara that will probably make your life easier. I also want to move this so we can show our neat little label here. But yeah, so I wanted to go through some of the features in Nobara that aren't normally found in standard Linux distributions or things that people might not know about because not everybody reads the change logs, not everybody goes digging into things. They just a lot of the times they just want things to just up and run, which is great. Nobara does that, but it also has some quirks of its own that some of them you really need to follow, especially in terms of like updating. So yeah, I wanted to jump into that, and I'll try to do some timestamps on this video so that we have certain bits. It's easy to navigate. So I guess we'll start with updating because updating is the biggest thing that people always have problems with, and sometimes I've tried to keep it as smooth as possible. We've gotten way better than it was in the past, but there's still hiccups every once in a while, and people panic and freak out. So let's go ahead and try and jump into that. The first thing that I want to do here is we'll go to our updater. So when you go to update the system, you always want to use the update system app. Always. I can't say that enough. The reason is because when you run the update system app, it has a set of like quirks that it runs rather than running your standard DNF update. What it'll do is it'll go through that list of quirks and it will apply these quirks. See it going through this list of quirks here. It'll go through those quirks and fix things on your system if they're not set properly. Some of the things are like it'll refresh all of your repositories and your GBG keys so that you 100% are getting the latest metadata rather than waiting for an update that you're like, okay, it's not here yet. So that's one of the things that it does for the quirks. It'll update the updater itself. So after it updates the repositories, the next quirk that it does is it will try to update itself. And if it does have an update that it finds for itself, you'll see it close itself and then relaunch itself. So if it magically disappears for some reason and then pops back up, that's what it's doing. It's relaunching the new version of itself after it updated. Cleaning out outdated kernel modules. So this one is basically sometimes you'll have leftover kernel module headers or files or things that aren't in use anymore that either got removed at some point or you manually removed part of them and there's leftovers. This cleans those out so that you always have them nice and clean and you shouldn't get any kernel module related errors. Next, let's see. It makes sure that Rpmfusion is installed if it doesn't exist because we've had people actually somehow, I don't know how, but they got Rpmfusion to disappear. So that makes sure that Rpmfusion is always there. I wish we didn't have to rely on Rpmfusion, but unfortunately there are still some packages that come from there. But anyway, moving on. Run both dracut and akmods if any kmods exist. So if there's a kernel update, it will run akmods and dracut. So make sure that the akmods, the modules for whatever, every time. Okay, let me back up here. Every time you update the kernel, if you have external kernel modules, for example, the Nvidia drivers, those have to be rebuilt every time that there's a kernel update. Now, the reason you don't have to do that at AMD is because the kernel has AMD's kernel module built into it. Since Nvidia is proprietary and they're special, they have a separate external kernel module that has to be therefore has to be rebuilt every single time that you update the kernel. That's why a lot of the times when people update the Nvidia module or Nvidia drivers and kmods, akmods, or dracut hasn't been run, they'll reboot and they'll be like, "Why am I at a black screen with a cursor?" It's because the kernel module can't load because you didn't build it or it didn't get built. Usually, akmods is supposed to do it by itself after a period of time, but sometimes what happens is the driver will install, and then it'll start doing akmods in the background, but users will see, oh, all my updates were done, and they'll reboot before akmods finishes or before dracut finishes. It should run both, but they'll reboot before it finishes, and therefore you never get complete kernel modules for your Nvidia drivers. So this makes sure that it runs. It also runs after updates, so not just in Quirks. If you do system updates and then at the end of the system update, if it detected there was a kernel update, it'll run dracut and akmods. So for those that don't know, the difference between akmods and dracut, akmods is like your DKMS on Ubuntu. They do the same thing. They both handle kernel modules. It's just Fedora uses akmods instead of DKMS. You can use DKMS too if you want. You can use both of them side by side, really. But akmods is pretty much the default standard for Fedora. Dracut, what dracut does is it stores certain things in init-ramfs. So you have your kernel, and then you have the init-ramfs, which you can think of the init-ramfs as like a little tiny mini root file system, and it loads that first and grabs data from that, and then once it grabs data from that and loads that data, it then switches to your hard disk or whatever your NVMe drive, and that's how the boot process works. So if certain things aren't in your dracut image for init-ramfs, your init-ramfs image, if certain things aren't in there that are supposed to be, then that can also lead to a boot failure. So that's why we run akmods and dracut, because akmods rebuilds all your kernel modules. Dracut makes sure that you have a full, complete, newly generated init-ramfs. So that's why that runs. Kwin and mutter. So next quirk is if an update ran and kwin or mutter were in the update. Kwin is the window manager for KDE. Mutter is the window manager for GNOME. So if either of those were updated, it says, okay, we need to make sure to ask the user to reboot afterwards because it needs to reload those. And the only way to reload those is honestly just to reboot, or at least to restart the login manager. Okay, so going on through the rest of these quirks. Install input Plumber for controller input. Okay, so this is mainly for handhelds, but it also works really well for standard controllers. Input Plumber, if I don't know if any of you have used HHD on Bazite, Input Plumber does the same thing HHD does. It has its own overlay that works inside the GameScope session as well. But what that does is it remaps the controls for a lot of the handhelds. So it'll detect the handheld hardware, figure out which hardware it is, and apply controller mappings for that hardware. This is really useful for those third-party handhelds like the Legion Go or the ROG Ally, etc. So Input Plumber does that. And the other thing that it does is it allows you to assign profiles to certain controllers. and it has a whole spew of third-party controllers that it supports. One of the things that's in GameScope, and I'll try and get into that in another video. I'll do a whole video on the Nobara Steam Deck edition, because there's some things in there that are really 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 cool actually. But Input Plumber is one of those, and it actually it really really helps with getting things mapped out properly for controller support. Problematic package cleanup. So this, what happens is when you update to a newer version, so just starting from Nobara 41 onwards, what we did is we did a semi-rolling release. So rather than in the past where you would have to do a couple of commands to get Nobara updated from like 41 to 42 or 40 to 41, instead what we did is we've done a semi-rolling release to where now you'll just receive those updates through the updater. So when Nobara 43 comes out, you'll just see the Nobara 43 packages come through the updater. You won't have to run any special package, special commands. And part of that is sometimes when you're going through these updates, older packages will get deprecated, meaning they'll be old, they're no longer used, they're replaced with something else. And so this problematic package cleanup is constantly updated, mostly between version releases, so that it cleans up those deprecated packages for you. The next thing, clear plasmashell cache if Plasma Workspace update is available. So every time there's a new release of Plasma, KDE Plasma, there's a couple of main packages that are involved, one of them being Plasma Workspace. And sometimes when Plasma Workspace gets updated, there'll be a quirk or something where it'll goof up on rendering things properly. Or maybe you'll come to a black screen with a cursor, like a mouse cursor, or a black screen with a loading bar, and it freezes at the loading bar. What this does is it clears the Plasmashell cache, which is in your user.cache folder. It cleans that cache out so that when you log in the next time, there's nothing sitting in that cache, and therefore it doesn't try to load anything from the cache. And that usually can fix that issue and allow it to render properly. Nvidia Epoch, you don't really have to worry about this so much anymore. This is something that we had for between Nobara 40 and Nobara 41. There was a mess up with the Epoch versions on the packages, and so we had to fix that, but that's not really an issue anymore. It just checks in case there's a really old version that still needs it. Swap out old AMD ROCM packages with Fedora ones. Again, this is something that's not really needed for 41 or 42 onward. This was a 40 to 41 issue. Before 41, we used ROCM packages coming directly from AMD. And now we use ROCM packages coming directly from Fedora because they work. And what you need ROCM packages for are things like Blender HIP support or DaVinci Resolve. Actually, I don't even know if DaVinci Resolve needs ROCM anymore. But anyway, at those times when we were originally working on them, they needed ROCM support. So that's what it does. It just switches from the old AMD packages to the Fedora ones. It's a lot easier. It's less to maintain for us because Fedora's doing their own packages now, which we pull anyway. So that's what that's for. Mesa-vulkan-drivers fix up. In old versions of Nobara, we used to... the way we would ship Mesa is we would ship all of Mesa except for the release versions of Mesa Vulkan, the Vulkan drivers. Everything else would be Mesa release, and then we would ship Mesa Vulkan drivers built from Git instead, because the Git drivers had the newest fixes and updates. Well, we changed that. Instead, now what we do is we do ship a full release, a full Mesa release. When you install Nobara 41 or 42 and fully update, you'll get the full Mesa release. And then you have the option in the driver manager now to switch between the release drivers or the Git drivers. That was done for stability because these days you don't really need Mesa Git nearly as much as you would need it like back in the day. But people still like to have the Git versions. I run the Git versions because there's fixes in the Git versions coming like all the time for different games. Doom Eternal was a recent one that got fixes in Git that needed to be backported to the latest release. So what this will do is, if you have the older version of the driver stack where it was Mesa release with Git, with Vulkan Git, it would fix that to where it's a full release. But it's only up to a specific older version, and then once you're past that version, it allows you to have either Mesa Vulkan drivers or Mesa Vulkan drivers Git. And I can show you how that works in Driver Manager. We open the Nobara Driver Manager, and I go to my AMD chip. Actually, which one? Here, it's 9070. See how it has a check mark next to latest Git version of Mesa Vulkan drivers? I can click this and click install, and it'll switch that check mark from the Git version to the stable version. So that's something new in Nobara that we did with the driver manager. Late 41, new to 42. So that's what that is. The vaapi fixup, that just makes sure that you have the necessary packages installed for vaapi. Vaapi is AMD. Think of it as AMD's encode decode support for video playback and video recording. Nvidia has NVEnc. AMD and Intel both support vaapi on the Linux side. And you'll see this show up in OBS as well. Like if I bring up my OBS here, and I go to settings, and I go to output, recording, you see I've got FFmpeg vaapi AV1 support selected. There's AV1, H.264, H.265, but that's basically how vaapi works. Kernel fsync. So this is a quirk to convert older kernel names to the newer kernel that we have. The older kernel that we had had fsync in the name, and the new one that we have is based off of CachyOS. So we have a lot of their patches and like a lot of their performance patches specifically. And when that update happened, we had to add a quirk to help users convert from the old kernel to the new one. So that's what that does. And then the media fixup. Media fixup will always run last. That is basically your media codec support. It'll ask you, it'll say, hey, we noticed you don't have proper codecs installed or some packages are missing. Would you like to install those? You always want to hit yes to that. Always, always, always. Otherwise, you might have things like MPV or like VLC. Those are both video players for those who don't know. That might not play videos properly because they're missing codec support for them. Or you might have a native browser installed and video playback isn't working in the browser. So that's what that quirk does. It makes sure that you have all the proper codecs installed for video playback. So once it runs through all of these quirks, it will then say, okay, we've done all of the quirks. Now we'll give you the option to install your updates. And you hit install updates. It'll install your system updates listed here. It'll install your Flatpak user updates listed here. It'll install your Flatpak system updates listed here. And usually you hit install, and it will, after it's finished with everything, it will have cleared all of these lists. If you hit install and it goes through and says that it finished, but there's still stuff listed here, or here, or here, usually it's listed here. If there's something listed here after you hit the update button and it completed, that means there was some kind of error in this log. And it'll report the reason that it couldn't update in this log. So when that happens, this is where people get hung up 99% of the time. They're like, oh no, I can't update. I have 300 something updates and it's still saying that I have updates. What do I do? You go to open log file or open log directory, right? You're going to go here. you're going to grab this log, Nobara sync.log, okay? Then, let me bring this over here. And we're going to go to paste. Now, in the future, I'll probably change this to an actual Nobara specific paste bin. But for now, this is what we've been using for centuries. This is my personal paste bin that I've just had forever. It doesn't keep anything. Everything expires. It's basically like a privacy safe, privacy user friendly paste bin. You can use whatever other paste bin you want if you want. We just direct people to use this one. It's my paste.gloriousarrow.tv. Again, like I said, I'll probably make another one just like this, specifically for Nobara at some point. But for now, this is what we use. So you grab this, and you're going to want to just like hit attach a file, choose file, and go here. Or I think you can drag. Yeah, so you can drag too. And then you hit send, and it'll give you this log, okay? Or this URL. You're going to copy that. And at that point, you really want to reach out to Discord, and that's usually where we are able to help. I have a lot of stuff open in Discord. Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff open in Discord. But yeah, you can go in here and then you can say, "Hey, I'm hitting an issue. Here's my log," and usually me or somebody will be able to help you there. Or if you want, you can also post the log in. If you really want, you can post the log in on Reddit. There's people there that'll help. I don't like. I pop into Reddit every once in a while. Sometimes it gets. I'm gonna admit. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming for me. So I hop in there every once in a while just to help, but I also avoid it at the same time to keep my sanity. But yeah, either one of those places, I would say the best place to get support if you're hitting an issue with the updater is grab your log and go to the Discord. If you don't know where the Discord is, it's on our website. If you go to nobaraproject.org, it's right here. Right here. So I would make sure to do that if you have problems with the updater. What else? Oh, here's another thing. If you ever need to update through CLI, like, let's say you can't get to the desktop for whatever reason, right? But you know you can do Control Alt F3 or F4 or F5, and it'll drop you down to the terminal. If you ever need to do that, you can. I'm gonna open a new terminal. You can do Nobara sync CLI, and it'll run through your updates. When you run Nobara sync CLI, it will go ahead and just apply any updates that it finds. You don't have to do like an install button or anything like that. It's just going to go ahead and do it the same way. And I'll wait for that to get done. Meanwhile, there's something I got to look up real quick, but I can tell you how to do logs from here too. Okay. Waiting. So once again, the same thing that I said before, if you're updating here and there's some kind of error and you couldn't update properly for whatever reason, and you need to get this log, what you can do is, we've got a command here too. Let me do this. So this is going to be the location of the log. You're going to cat the log pipe egg paste. Hit this, and it's going to give you that same URL from the same paste bin. You copy that, and then from there you can, I don't know, take a picture of it, or log into SSH from your cell phone or something, copy it from there, log in from another computer, copy it from there, and then open Discord and talk to us in Discord about it. That's the easiest way to get those issues resolved. A lot of times with the updates, there's a lot of the same issues over and over and over again. 90% of the time, there's not really any update issues in terms of normal users. The only time that we really get users that have issues are A, they're updating from a really old install, or B, they're hitting some kind of weird Nvidia driver issue. That's it, really, honestly. If there's, in terms of updates, if there's any conflict that comes up here and it's abnormal, usually I'll see it and I'll fix it like within 24 hours at the latest. So just be aware of that. If it's something that's like kind of wonky and it sticks out, I will usually have already seen that and be working on a fix on it or fix it within the next 24 hours. So just FYI on that. A lot of the times that'll happen, like say we do an update. For those that don't know, the way that we do updates on Nobara is we will do a snapshot of Fedora's packages first. So every month we do a snapshot of Fedora's packages and Fedora's updates, right? We do that snapshot, and then after that, we check locally or check on our test system to see, okay, we just updated all these packages in the snapshot. What conflicts do we have on Copper? Because what we lay on top of the snapshot is our own packages from Copper, as well as our media packages and our AppStream packages. So update the snapshot, and then we find any conflicts, we update Copper for any conflicts that we saw with Copper, and the same thing with AppStream, same thing with media. Once all of those conflicts are resolved, we then push everything to public so that users can get all of the updated packages with the fixes and they don't hit the conflicts. But occasionally we miss something, we're not perfect. We can't catch everything, and every once in a while there will be something that slips through the cracks and shows up, and somebody's like, why isn't Plasma Workspace updating? Oh, well, we updated the snapshot, forgot to update the Copper. There's your problem. So anyway, that's how that works. That's how you can get your logs in case there's an issue with updates. That's the easiest way that we can describe that in terms of like doing system updates, getting them done properly. Now, let's say you want to install a system package. Most of the time, we kind of avoid, we don't really want users messing with system packages, but there are a couple of them that people might want. For example, like the system version of Steam or the system version of OBS. We actually prefer people to use the system version of OBS. A couple of packages. Most of the packages you can find on Flatpak are perfectly fine, but there's a few and far in between that you can do from system packages. For system packages, we have Nobara Package Manager. Open this up. And what this is basically for is just searching system packages. If you know there's a specific system package that you want, you can search for it up here, type in the package name. Let's say we want Vim. That's not going to show up because I already have Vim installed. What can we look for? How about... I don't know. Anyway, you can see there's a lot of packages here. You can search for them, install whatever specific ones you want if you find what you're looking for. That's really the only reason that we have this. You can manage Flatpaks here, but we have something better for that, so I wouldn't really bother with Flatpaks here. If you hit the Update System app, it's just going to bring you back to the system updater that we just had open. So that's how, again, another way you can update the system. if you go to updates here, if there's anything red here, ignore it. Ignore it. You're not going to be able to update from here with anything that's red. You're not going to be able to, because those are packages that we have to update on our side. And once we update it on our side, nothing red will show up here. But you really shouldn't be using this for updating your system. Just the only thing that's a viable update is a viable way to update your system is to hit the update system button here, which again opens the other app that we just had. Down here is also linked to this. So one thing a lot of people really complain about too is getting update notifications. It'll say, oh, it'll every once in a while it'll pop up and say you've got XYZ notification, or 100 package updates or 200 package updates. Sometimes people don't like that. For the notifications, people tend to get really annoyed by the notifications. You can go into the package manager and go to preferences. And if you go down to updater settings, you can change this. You can show system tray icon on updates. You can show or hide that icon that was down here. Send notification on updates. You can turn this on or off so that you don't get updates at all. Or you can do check update interval and minutes. You can change the amount of time that it checks. For right now, I've got it checking every hour for updates. But like, if you don't want that, you just turn this off completely, and then you're good. But that's how that works. So if you want to get rid of those updates or turn those notifications off, that's how you can do that. So that covers the updates. That's the biggest thing on Nobara that a lot of people struggle with is the updates. One other thing might be the mounting drives, right? If I go to the console and I go to SBLK, you can see I've got some custom mounts right here, right? Now, the old-fashioned way of doing this, the reason I have this done is because I have it specifically, like, I wanted it specifically set like that. But for the standard new user, they're not going to know how to do that. Like if I go to cat, let's see, fstab, you can see my mounts here, right? A normal person is not going to know how to do that. They're not going to know what fstab, especially a new person. They're not going to know what fstab is. They're not going to know how to get the UUID. They're not going to know what mount points are. Like, that's just not something that a new person, especially a new person to Linux, is going to know about. So the easiest way to do this is, let's say, for example, you just installed Nobara on a brand new gaming PC. You installed it on the main drive, and you've got 4 or 3 other hard drives, right? Let's say you've got those 3 other hard drives, and you are like, okay, I just installed this system. Where are my other drives? So for this demonstration, let me clear out my mounts. Oh, do I have it open? I probably have it open. Still open. What do I have that has it open? Okay. What about... Oh, let's close Steam, maybe? See if that works. Okay, so we'll unmount our games. So our mount games, right? So let's say all my games are on my games drive, and I just installed Nobara, and I need to figure out as a new user how I can get my games to show up, or how do I access that drive. What I can do is I can go to Nobara Tweak Tool, right here, Nobara, and I can check a box, and then close the tool. That's it. That's all you got to do. Now, if I open this, let me move this over here because I got a bunch of stuff. Okay, so I just had to navigate. Like I said, this has a lot of my personal stuff on here, so I don't want to put that out to the public. Anyway, so I just mounted that drive. Where is it? Let's go back to our console. Clear. LSBLK. And that checkbox mounted that drive here at run, media, my username, and then the UUID of that drive. And if we go, and it should be is it here maybe? Nope, that's storage. Backup. Here it is. Okay, so here's the one that we just mounted. But anyway, you'll see it's here. You can access it. Permissions should not be an issue, but you know, if you might have to change permissions on it depending on if your user was different or if you had it in a different system or if it was a Windows drive or something like that. NTFS can sometimes be a little bit wonky. So just keep that in mind. Generally, you might have to change permissions on here. With XT4 and XT3 and XFS, I haven't really had any issues with that. But with NTFS, you know, it's a little bit picky, so people always tend to have problems with that. One thing you can do if you need to do that is, let's say I go to that folder. Come on, Jesus. Alright, LSLA. Now, you can see everything is owned by my username, and those are my permissions. Let's say my Steam library is not owned by my username. What I can do is I can do sudo chown recursive username Steam library. I can hit that, and it'll go through this folder and recursively set everything to owned by me. And then if you want like to have it full-blown, full access permissions for pretty much anybody, in addition to the ownership that you just did, you can do sudo chmod r777 Steam library. Okay? Between those two, that should 99% of the time get your Steam library up and running and accessible. So that's pretty much an easy way to manage your mounts. It's also really useful on the Steam Deck. If you installed or the HTPC, the Nobara HTPC releases that we have. Because a lot of the times with the HTPC releases, it's a little bit more difficult to do that, and you can actually run this tweak tool inside of GameScope, which makes things easier. You know, just run it and then open that and then close it, and you're done. And then you can access all your games inside Steam. So that's that. Let me go ahead and mount my drives again. It's because I opened Steam. Oh, it's because I'm actually in the folder, sorry. There we go. All right, so that covers mounting. We covered updates. Covered all the quirks that we do. Welcome app. Welcome. So in this welcome app, a lot of people overlook this thing. There's some really useful stuff here. One is you update your system. You can access that from First Steps. When you first install the system, it'll already give you a pop-up that says, hey, we notice this is a new install. Would you like to update your system? You go ahead and hit yes on that. The other thing is the Driver Manager. If you open a Driver Manager, this is where you would generally install your NVIDIA drivers too. If I had an NVIDIA card, it would show the NVIDIA card here. And then if I click here, well, on whatever the card was, down here for NVIDIA, you would see it'll recommend that the default open source driver, the open source NVIDIA driver, and then underneath here you'll have additional profiles. And so what that'll allow you to do is install either the new feature branch or the beta branch instead of the public branch. So there's 3 branches for NVIDIA because they're nutcases. You've got your production branch, you've got your new feature branch, and you've got your beta branch. For each branch, you can choose between open or closed driver. The open driver will use the NVIDIA proprietary, it's proprietary in that it's still made by NVIDIA, and it's still a separate kernel module, but it's an open source driver that users can use and hack on and submit fixes to and whatnot. That's the default, the production open driver. You can choose the production closed driver if you want. And you can do the same thing for the beta open or closed driver or the new feature open or closed driver. And all of that will be in here. You can just check a box between those. Now, if you need to remove NVIDIA drivers for any reason, let's say you switch from an NVIDIA driver or NVIDIA card to an AMD card, right? You can close this out. Well, the first problem that you're going to run into is you're going to open this. You're going to be like, oh, I need to remove NVIDIA drivers. And then you're going to be like, oh, my NVIDIA card isn't here anymore. How do I click somewhere to uninstall the drivers? One, don't worry. It's not bad. Your system will be perfectly fine without them. It'll just boot the AMD driver. But, a lot of people like to have a clean system. So what you would do instead is you can do this. Open up a console, sudo dnf remove star NVIDIA star. It's going to remove everything NVIDIA. Oops, wrong password. Now, this is the one package that you always do not want to remove or have installed. So when you run this first command, you're going to get a whole slew of NVIDIA packages that are listed. It's a lot easier to just hit yes, let it remove that, and then you can just reinstall this. So sudo dnf install NVIDIA GPU firmware. The NVIDIA GPU firmware package is the only one that is not coming from NVIDIA. That is a sub-package that is part of the Linux firmware package. You need this for NVIDIA cards. All NVIDIA cards. So make sure not to remove this, or if you do remove your NVIDIA drivers like this, just make sure to reinstall the GPU firmware. Okay? That's the easiest way to just completely wipe the NVIDIA drivers on your system after you've already switched your GPU to a different card. Let's see. Anything else? I'm trying to think of anything else. Edit. One more thing I forgot. I knew I was going to forget something. Installing applications that aren't system packages, aka Flatpaks, aka snaps as well. Nobara supports both. So one thing that I'll go over Flatpaks first because that's usually the go-to for most people. Yeah. So in Nobara 42, we introduced a new store. So rather than using KDE Discover or GNOME Software, now you can still use those if you want to. If you want to use GNOME Software, you can install GNOME Software. Same with Plasma Discover. You can install Plasma Discover if you really want to. The reason that we moved away from those is there's twofold. One is that those packages also tried to manage system updates, and we didn't want that because it doesn't do it properly. It doesn't take into consideration repository priority. So, like, we have our Fedora repo, and then we have our Copper repo that goes on top of that. A lot of those two repos have the same, like, some of the same packages, but Nobara's packages are just modified versions. So obviously, we want the Nobara repo packages from Copper to have a higher priority. You can do that with DNF priority settings, but when we started trying to work with Plasma Discover and the GNOME Software Center, those two didn't take that priority into consideration when giving system updates. So we had to gut out the package kit settings, or the package kit configurations in both of those, so that they only manage Flatpaks. Now, the second problem with those is that even though we gutted package kit so that it only handles Flatpaks for both of those, second problem is that it doesn't handle Flatpak permissions. Neither of them handle Flatpak permissions. They also don't handle, well, I guess KD Plasma Discover handles repositories, but the main thing is you would have to install like Flatseal to handle Flatpak permissions. So we wanted something that, one, only handled Flatpaks, and two, allowed you to handle permissions. So rather than having to go and hunt down Flatseal, because again, new user not gonna know, hey, how do I do this? Why can't I drag and drop in Discord? It's because you have to set the permissions for that. How do I set the permissions? Well, you have to use Flatseal. Before, we would offer Flatseal as pre-installed in Nobara. Now we don't need to, because we introduced a new store. So we have a store called Flatpost now, and this will take a minute to launch. But it does the same thing as your GNOME Software or your KDE Discover, your Plasma Discover, in that it allows you to manage your Flatpaks, install Flatpaks, remove Flatpaks, add Flatpak repositories if you want, remove Flatpak repositories if you want. For custom, there are applications out there that aren't on the Flatpak or the FlatHub store that users want. I know an anime launcher is one of them, so you can do that. But the reason we built this is not just for our own purposes, but also because we wanted a distribution agnostic store, or a desktop agnostic store, that could be used on any desktop. You can run this on Hyperland, you can run this on XFCE if you really want, you can run this on LabWC, you can run this on Budgie, pretty much anything. Like, it's desktop agnostic, GNOME Software, specific to GNOME. Plasma Discover, specific to KDE. And I think System 76's Cosmic has their own shop too, that's specific to Cosmic. But we made this agnostic so that anybody can use it. And the cool thing about it is you also don't have to install Flatseal. So let's go to our installed. I have Discord installed, right? If I go to my options here, it has all the exact same tweaks that Flatseal has. Yep. So I did this. I built this whole thing. I imported all the permissions, figured out how to do all this stuff. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid, YouTube being YouTube. Anyway, so you have all your toggles here. And obviously, like, if I want to be able to share files, I have to allow it access to those file locations, which is why you've got access to my mounts, or access to my run media, access to my user. Well, I'll give it access to my user files. If I go, let's see here. I've installed and removed it a couple of times, so there we go. Now it has access to my user files. And you can do this globally. There are global toggles as well. So if I want like all Discord or all Flatpak apps that I ever install to have user access, I can go boom, there, done. Now all of any Flatpak I want will now have access to my user files, my home folder. That prevents a lot of headache. Having everything all in one setting prevents a lot of headache. Also, if you go to like, let's go to FlatHub. FlatHub. Right? If I go here, I click here, and I hit install, it'll ask me to download a Flatpak ref, right? I can actually download that Flatpak ref and then drag and drop it on top of here, and it will ask me if I want to install it. So that's one cool thing. The other thing is if we go to our repositories, we can add custom repositories. So like you see I have gol.launcher.moe. This is the custom repository for, where is that at? An anime launcher. This is commonly used for like Honkai Impact, or I think you can use it for Genshin as well, a couple other games, gacha games. So if you want custom repositories, you can do that as well. It fetches all of the trending and popular and new and updated. It fetches these from FlatHub directly. So these will always be updated, always change every time that it updates the metadata. You can refresh it manually here with the refresh button. And you can search for specific types. Like say you want to install something that runs as a service. You can search for services, or if you want like codec specific packages, you can do that. Yeah, you just search. Like if I wanted to install zEditor, there it is right at the top. So that's just one thing that I wanted to mention on how to install software from FlatHub. And for snaps, I believe snaps are pre-installed, but if not, you can always just sudo dnf install snapd, or go to the let's see, do I have snaps installed? I think I have snaps installed. Yeah, okay, I do have snaps installed. But if you didn't have snaps installed, we actually have a wiki entry on it for installing it. wiki.nobaraproject.org. This is a really useful wiki, by the way. We always keep it up to date, both myself and our mods. We try to keep as much in here as possible. So wiki is another really, really good source for information. So let's see. Snaps. I think I have someone here for snaps. Snap. Yeah, install ysnapd. That will automatically install the Snap Store, like when you install it, and then if I type Snap, it'll bring up App Center. I can hit App Center. Boom. Now I can have access to Snaps. I can install Snaps via the official Snap Store. For reference, like I use the Snap Store specifically for NordVPN. NordVPN's client, they don't have a Flatpak, they only have a Snap. So I use their Snap Store application, and it works perfectly fine. So again, just two things that I forgot to mention regarding installing applications that are not system packages. I'll edit this into the video, and yeah, I think we've covered pretty much most of the aspects of main daily use for Nobara. You know, a lot of the Nobara specific things and Nobara specific quirks that aren't the same as other systems, specifically and especially with regards to updating the system or keeping it updated. That's it. I know this has been a little bit of a long video, and again, like I said, I'll make some timestamps to kind of break things up a little bit so you can access them a little bit better and easier. But yeah, that's it for this video. I'll make a couple of other videos, some things like maybe like using OBS or using Umu Launcher or using Lutris or using Heroic. I know those are all things for people that, you know, they want to play games that are not necessarily on Steam. So we'll go over those in another video, and I'll make these like a whole series of Nobara videos. But yeah, hopefully this helps with new people that are starting on Nobara and trying to figure things out. All right. If you got any other questions, again, the best place to reach me is our Discord channel. I'm always there. I may be sleeping. Please don't ping me, though. It's in the rules. Read the rules. Follow the rules. As long as you read and follow the rules, people will generally be nice. Don't ping me. There's a lot of people in there that can help besides me. You go in our Nobara channel, you pop your question, people will generally help out there, okay? And like I said, if I'm online and I see it and I can answer it, I will hop in as well and try to help. So, thanks guys. I'll see you on the next one.